Hello everybody, I'm here today to play some more TF2. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done a TF2 rant. I've been busy with tutorials and working on other videos. I've been kind of busy. Plus, I admit I was drawing a slight blank when I was actually trying to come up with an idea for a video for a TF2 rant. But I thought of one. Anyway, today I will be playing as the sniper. Yup, I get a few headshots and I play pretty well in this game, but a lot of it isn't that great because I'm not actually the best sniper in the world. Problem is I miss way too many heavies and they all usually come back to bite me and probably kill my team, and I feel bad about it, so I don't play sniper that often again anymore. I know I started playing it quite often, but then, you know, there's always like 5 snipers in the team and you don't really want to be that guy who just becomes the 6th sniper. Anyway, it's not what I'm talking about as per usual. I'm here today to talk about indie games. Now, not indie games in general, because indie games in general, they're great and a lot of fun and a different experience. What I want to talk about is actually the business model behind indie games. Are they viable? What I mean by that is, if you don't know, indie games are made by a small group of people, they have no publisher, and they have no real money to sustain them. How they sustain themselves is they sell the game, and they sell it for usually 10 quid a pop, and what happens is they make all the money off that. They're usually badly advertised, and they're usually only really found from Steam. So, my question about that is it a viable way to make games? Now, I understand how amazing it is for the change, and how much fun it is to play brand new games that haven't had the same idea, and to not play like Assassin's Creed 12 Custer's Revenge or something like that. But I will be entirely honest, when I see an indie game on Steam, I'm not as fast to buy it. Like, it depends on how expensive the game is, and usually I'll wait till the Steam sales when they're worth like 0.2 cents per game and they're like a third of the usual price, because it doesn't seem worth it otherwise. And I can't be the only one who's like that. Like, is it just me, or do most gaming companies only really make a lot of their profits during the Christmas and summer sales? Because that's what it seems like to me. Because only like people who review it, or people who really were looking forward to the game, or people who were part of the Kickstarter, those are the people who like buy it immediately. But no one really buys indie games immediately. But to answer that question, yeah, I do think they're a viable market, because indie games are always different. That's the point of them. They're a different idea. They never repeat themselves, and they always try to change up and make brand new ideas as best they can, because there's no publisher pressuring them into making older games. Now, I know this is a beautiful idea, that people make games that are brand new, have a brand new idea that people haven't experienced before, and we hope that a majority of people will buy it, saying, oh, this is a brand new experience, I want to see what this is like. To a point, yeah, that is actually how people on PC especially treat it. On Xbox Arcade, there isn't as much of a monopoly as there is on Steam. Basically, if you get on Steam, you're at least gonna make some bang for your buck. But quite similar to Xbox Live Arcade, if you make the front pages. But if you don't, you're lost in time, pretty much. But as a whole, it can be difficult to even get at that point, because so many other games come out like weekly and monthly that unless you come out like at a time when no one else is bringing out games, there is quite a high chance that you're not going to get your game out. So if people brought out the indie games at like November, when like all the big games are coming out, then honestly I don't think they get sold until the Christmas sales in December. So to be more specific on my answer, I believe that indie games work. Actually, I want to believe that the idea of indie games works, but I think it depends on the placement of when you put it out. If you put it out like November or April, usually are the biggest months for video games, there is quite a high chance that your game won't get seen. It'll be dropped to the bottom of the list, and you won't get any sales until the Steam sales, which mightn't help you survive for that long. It seems to me like indie games are turning into what the film industry was around the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Indie games are becoming like indie movies back then, because there was a load of independent films that really blew up because of word of mouth and because people recommended it, which is why YouTubers come into that account so much. And what happens is they jump onto the publisher bandwagon, and suddenly they have to repeat what they're doing, and they are under pressure, so it takes away from the idea. So it leaves some devs between a rock and a hard place, because either they have to fight between their artistic integrity or to sell out and go with a publisher and possibly having to repeat your last game to make the same amount of money and not be able to go on to new projects, which I think is a big thing for indie developers, to keep going with new projects and not make too many sequels of the same game. For example, Super Meat Boy did really freaking well. An example of artistic integrity is the guys who made Super Meat Boy. Actually, little fact, is also the guys who made the Binding of Isaac. And as you can see, they do make some quirky games, because Super Meat Boy, despite all the amazing mechanics in it, is about a guy with no skin. Well, his skin's inside out, saving his girlfriend, who's made of bandages. And their enemy is a fetus. Like, okay, I doubt publishers would ever let that happen if they had a publisher. I watched Indie Game the movie, and half the ideas those guys had for the game, I'd say none of them would have been allowed past the publisher for more than 5 seconds, because some of them were just so crazy. But when you go back to that game and you realize that it makes the game better. And when watching Indie Game the movie, I did realize that they were struggling near the end, because they were working so hard, spending so many hours on one game, and they had no money to live on. They were literally, they were pretty much stink broke for a long time. Like, the guy who lived with his family had 6 hours sleep, and he literally had not a cent to his name. Like, he had a mortgage to pay off for his house, and in fairness, I know in the end the game was a massive success, so it worked out for him, but in all honesty, what if the game wasn't a success? Because there are hundreds of indie game titles that get out there and don't get their sales and end up on the bottom of the list. What if he was in that situation? Like, would he have still had his mortgage? He would have been pretty much screwed, because his game took like 2 years to make it and meant pretty much nothing in the end of the day. So I actually have a lot of respect for the indie game developers, because of their massive will that they actually would rather keep their artistic integrity than go over to a publisher despite having serious financial troubles and like having to keep up the game, which is another financial bill as well. It's a huge risk. My final point is that the business model for indie games are very on edge. So I actually have a lot of respect for indie game developers. I hope to God that in the future people will continue to buy indie games that they see on Steam for a tenner each and help the developers make more games and keep doing what they love. Anyway, that's it. If you like what you saw, feel free to see more. If you didn't like what you saw, then I won't see you again next time. Feel free to like and subscribe. Bye.